In the heart of Texas, the flames of the present crisis cast a shadow toward the uncertain future. The wildfire disaster that has swept across counties is not just a passing emergency, it is a wake-up call. It forces Texans and the nation to confront deeper questions. What comes next? How prepared are communities for the next fire, the next drought, the next disaster? This moment is about more than survival. It is about resilience, foresight, and long-term solutions. The year 2025 has already proven itself volatile. Scientists and meteorologists have warned that hotter summers, longer dry seasons, and shifting wind patterns are not anomalies but part of an unfolding pattern linked to climate change. For Texas, a state defined by its wide plains, ranches, and oil fields, this pattern creates a dangerous backdrop. Wildfires, once considered seasonal and regional, now threaten to become a year-round danger. The question is not whether another fire will ignite, but when and how prepared communities will be to respond. Communities across Texas are bracing for more challenges. The remainder of 2025 still lies ahead, with months of heat and drought expected. Many counties remain vulnerable, with dry grasslands serving as kindling. Meteorological forecasts point toward above-average temperatures in late summer and early fall, creating the perfect recipe for future outbreaks. For residents who have already faced evacuations and destruction, these forecasts feel less like predictions and more like warnings carved into the sky. Preparation begins at the community level. Across rural towns and suburban neighborhoods, discussions have already started about prevention. Fire safety workshops, evacuation drills, and community watch groups are becoming more common. Local leaders emphasize the importance of personal responsibility, clearing brush from properties, creating defensible space around homes, and maintaining awareness of burn bans. These may seem like small acts, but in the collective fight against wildfires, they make the difference between catastrophe and survival. Beyond individual actions, there is an urgent need for systematic change. Texas has historically invested heavily in firefighting equipment and response teams, but experts argue that prevention must be elevated to equal importance. The Texas A&M Forest Service has called for broader forest management practices, including controlled burns and vegetation thinning. These strategies, while sometimes controversial, have been proven to reduce fuel loads and limit the spread of megafires. However, implementing them requires funding, political will, and public support. Infrastructure also stands at the center of preparedness. In many fire-prone areas, aging power lines have sparked catastrophic blazes. Upgrading electrical grids, burying power lines where possible, and strengthening utility oversight are costly but critical steps. At the same time, building codes must adapt. New housing developments in wildfire risk zones should be required to use fire-resistant materials, install ember-resistant vents, and design communities with evacuation routes in mind. The future of Texas depends not only on bravery in the face of flames, but on smart, forward-thinking policies. Technology offers hope as well. Satellite monitoring, AI-driven fire detection, and drone surveillance are revolutionizing the way officials track and respond to threats. Real-time alerts can give residents precious minutes to evacuate, while predictive modeling can help identify high-risk areas before a single spark ignites. Texas, with its tradition of innovation and its network of research universities, has the opportunity to become a leader in wildfire technology. But technology alone is not enough. It must be integrated into everyday practice and supported by both government and private investment. There is also a human side to preparation. Recovery from wildfires is not just about rebuilding structures, but about healing communities. Mental health resources, financial support, and housing assistance are essential for families who have lost everything. Without this support, the scars of fire linger long after the smoke clears. A comprehensive strategy for the future must combine physical defenses with social resilience. The path forward is not without obstacles. Political debates will intensify over how to allocate budgets, what role the federal government should play, and how much responsibility should fall to state versus local authorities. Some will argue that climate change demands aggressive mitigation policies, while others will emphasize the importance of property rights and local control. These debates are not abstract, They directly shape how ready Texas will be when the next wildfire season arrives. Yet within these challenges lies a powerful opportunity. Texas can lead by example. By investing in prevention, strengthening infrastructure, embracing new technology, and fostering community resilience, the state can create a blueprint for others across the nation. Wildfires may be inevitable, but disasters on this scale are not. With foresight and determination, the fires of 2025 can become not just a tragedy, but a turning point. The story of Texas and its wildfires is still being written. What happens next depends on the choices made today, in county meetings, in the state legislature, and in households across the plains. The flames remind us that nature is fierce, but they also remind us of something else: the capacity of people to adapt, to learn, and to prepare for a safer tomorrow. If the future of Texas is to be safer, the foundation must be built at the community level. Wildfires are often described as natural disasters, but their impact is deeply shaped by human choices, how people build, prepare, and respond. In small towns, suburbs, and rural stretches across the state, residents are beginning to realize that prevention is not only the responsibility of firefighters or state agencies. It is a shared duty, and it begins with everyday decisions. Education is the first step. In counties recently scarred by wildfires, schools have already begun incorporating fire safety lessons into classrooms. Children are learning how quickly a blaze can spread, how to identify evacuation routes, and why their families must prepare emergency kits. These early lessons don't just save lives, they also cultivate a generation that grows up with an instinctive awareness of risk. Community centers host evening workshops where families gather to hear from experts about creating defensible spaces around homes, preparing go bags, and staying alert to changing conditions. Knowledge, once dispersed in manuals and pamphlets, is now being shared face to face, neighbor to neighbor. Local drills are another critical tool. Fire departments, sheriff's offices, and volunteer groups have begun organizing community-wide evacuation exercises. These drills simulate real emergencies, complete with sirens, road closures, and staged communication alerts. Though disruptive, they give residents a sense of what to expect and expose weaknesses in evacuation plans. For example, a recent drill in Bastrop County revealed bottlenecks along a single two-lane road leading out of a heavily wooded subdivision. Thanks to that discovery, county officials are now exploring alternative exit routes and emergency traffic management strategies. Every lesson learned in practice translates into lives saved in reality. Homeowners also hold tremendous power in reducing risk. A single untrimmed tree, a pile of brush near a fence, or wood stacked against the side of a house can turn into fuel during a wildfire. Fire prevention specialists emphasize what they call the defensible zone, the 30 to 100 feet surrounding a home that must be kept clear of flammable material. In fire-prone counties, some homeowner associations have started offering incentives, such as reduced fees or recognition programs, for residents who actively maintain defensible space. Others have formed neighborhood task forces that go house to house, helping elderly or disabled residents clear vegetation and strengthen their properties against embers. At the same time, burn bans and enforcement have taken on renewed importance. Texas counties frequently declare bans during droughts, but enforcement has historically been uneven. Now, with wildfires threatening communities more often, there is growing pressure on local officials to enforce bans strictly and to educate the public about the risks of even small backyard fires. Community leaders are working to shift attitudes, reminding residents that one careless act, like burning trash on a windy day, can endanger hundreds of homes. Volunteerism plays a powerful role as well. Texas has a long tradition of volunteer firefighting, and in recent years, community members have expanded their role beyond responding to blazes. Volunteers help with fire prevention education, distribute emergency supplies, and even patrol during high-risk days to watch for signs of smoke. These grassroots efforts supplement the work of official agencies and create a sense of solidarity. People know that when they step up to help their neighbors, they are also helping themselves. Technology is beginning to filter down into community preparedness too. Smartphone apps now provide real-time updates on wildfire conditions, evacuation orders, and weather alerts. Some communities are experimenting with neighborhood-level alert systems, using text messages, automated phone calls, or even drones equipped with loudspeakers. The goal is to reduce the lag between a fire's detection and residents' awareness. In wildfire emergencies, even 5 minutes can mean the difference between safe evacuation and deadly entrapment. But prevention is not just about physical safety, it's also about resilience. Communities that have faced wildfires know the emotional toll is just as heavy as the physical destruction. Churches, non-profits, and local mental health organizations are stepping in to provide counseling and support for survivors. Preparing for the future means recognizing that people will carry psychological scars, and addressing them is part of making communities stronger. A town that heals together can respond together. These efforts are not without challenges. Rural counties often lack funding for large-scale prevention programs, and many residents resist new regulations, viewing them as government intrusion. Yet as wildfires grow more destructive, attitudes are shifting. When neighbors see firsthand the devastation of unchecked flames, they become more open to collective solutions. What once seemed like unnecessary restrictions now appear as essential safeguards. The community-centered approach is a reminder that wildfire resilience is built from the ground up. State agencies can provide resources, scientists can offer models, and politicians can debate policies, but the people who live on the land are the ones who carry out the daily work of preparation. Clearing brush, practicing evacuation, checking alerts, helping a neighbor. These actions might seem small in isolation, but together they form the frontline defense against fire. Texas communities are beginning to understand a profound truth. The future of wildfire preparedness is not only about responding faster or fighting harder. It is about preventing smarter, adapting together, and ensuring that the bonds between neighbors are as strong as the fire is fierce. In that shared responsibility lies the hope of a safer future. When we look beyond immediate prevention and community drills, the question becomes, how can Texas prepare not just for this fire season, but for the decades to come? The long-term strategies are more complex, often involving science, politics, and major investments. Yet they are essential because wildfires are not just a temporary threat. They are becoming a recurring feature of the state's natural landscape. Forest management is at the heart of this conversation. For generations, Texas, like much of the United States, adopted a philosophy of aggressively extinguishing every wildfire. The goal was understandable: protect lives and property. But over time, this policy allowed dangerous levels of brush and undergrowth to accumulate. Forests that once experienced small, naturally occurring fires that cleared debris now burn hotter and faster, fueled by decades of built-up material. Recognizing this, experts are calling for a shift in approach, one that blends fire suppression with proactive management. Controlled burns, also known as prescribed fires, are one of the most effective tools. These carefully planned burns, carried out under specific weather conditions, reduce fuel loads and restore ecological balance. In Texas, prescribed fire councils already coordinate such efforts, but the scale remains too small compared to the size of the problem. Expanding these programs requires more trained personnel, better funding, and community trust. For many residents, the idea of deliberately setting fires can be unsettling. Education campaigns will be necessary to show that these smaller, controlled flames are the key to preventing catastrophic infernos. Beyond controlled burns, mechanical thinning, removing dead trees, brush, and overgrown vegetation, is another strategy. While costly and labor-intensive, thinning can create natural fire breaks and reduce the intensity of future blazes. Partnerships with logging companies and private landowners may help share the burden. Some counties are even exploring how to repurpose cleared wood as biofuel, turning a liability into a renewable resource. Infrastructure resilience is the second pillar of long-term strategy. Wildfires not only destroy homes, but also cripple the systems that communities depend on: power grids, water supplies, and transportation networks. In 2011, when Texas experienced its most devastating fire season in modern history, utility poles burned, water systems failed, and entire towns were left without basic services. To prevent such cascading failures, the state must rethink how critical infrastructure is designed. Power lines, for instance, are a well-known fire hazard. Sparks from electrical equipment have ignited some of the most destructive fires in California, and Texas faces similar risks. Burying lines underground, while expensive, can significantly reduce ignition sources. Where that is not feasible, utilities can harden equipment, increase inspections during droughts, and adopt public safety power shutoffs when conditions are extreme. Similarly, water systems must be reinforced with backup generators and fire-resistant materials, ensuring firefighters always have access to supply during emergencies. Urban planning also plays a critical role. As Texas continues to grow, developers are pushing into the wildland-urban interface, the zones where neighborhoods meet undeveloped forests or grasslands. This expansion dramatically increases fire risk. Long-term resilience will require stricter building codes, including fire-resistant materials, wider roads for evacuation, and mandatory defensible space requirements. Some communities are already experimenting with fire-adapted neighborhoods, designed from the ground up to withstand encroaching flames. Technology and science round out the picture. Satellite monitoring, artificial intelligence, and advanced climate models are giving officials unprecedented tools to predict and respond to fire risks. The Texas A&M Forest Service, for example, is working with NASA data to map soil moisture and vegetation conditions in near real time. These maps help predict where fires are most likely to ignite and how quickly they will spread. Drones are another emerging tool. Equipped with thermal cameras, they can scan large swaths of land to detect hotspots before they erupt into full-blown fires. During active wildfires, drones provide live aerial footage to incident commanders, improving decision-making and resource allocation. Some researchers are even developing drone systems capable of igniting prescribed burns in hard-to-reach areas, combining technology with traditional management practices. Artificial intelligence also has a growing role. Machine learning algorithms can analyze historical fire data, weather patterns, and topographical features to forecast risks days or even weeks in advance. These predictive systems could allow Texas officials to pre-position firefighting resources, issue early warnings, and reduce response times. Yet technology alone cannot solve the wildfire crisis. Its effectiveness depends on political will and long-term investment. Tools are only useful if they are funded, maintained, and integrated into a broader strategy that includes community engagement and ecological restoration. Policymakers must strike a balance between the immediate costs of prevention and the far higher costs of recovery. Every dollar spent reducing fuel loads or hardening infrastructure can save many times more in avoided disaster losses. At its core, the long-term strategy for Texas must embrace adaptability. The climate is shifting, weather extremes are intensifying, and the landscapes of Texas are changing. What worked in the past will not necessarily work in the future. Success will require flexible policies, innovative science, and above all, collaboration across every level of government and society. The stakes cannot be higher. A failure to act boldly today will leave future generations facing even more destructive fire seasons, with costs measured not just in dollars, but in lost communities, ecosystems, and lives. But if Texas leads with foresight, combining ancient practices like controlled burns with cutting-edge technology, it can become a model for wildfire resilience across the nation. Long-term strategies cannot be separated from politics. Wildfire management is not just a scientific or technical issue. It is also deeply tied to policy, funding priorities, and the competing values of economic growth versus public safety. In Texas, where land ownership, property rights, and rapid development are all defining features of society, shaping a cohesive statewide wildfire policy is one of the most difficult challenges ahead. At the state level, leadership from the governor's office, the legislature, and key agencies such as the Texas Division of Emergency Management and the Texas A&M Forest Service will determine how effectively strategies are adopted. Yet even among policymakers, there is often disagreement over where limited resources should be directed. Should the state invest heavily in prevention, such as forest thinning and controlled burns, or prioritize rapid response capacity, such as buying more helicopters, training firefighters, and deploying the National Guard? Both are necessary, but budgets force difficult trade-offs. The political debate also extends to how much responsibility should fall on state government versus local communities and private landowners. Texas is a state with a strong tradition of private property rights, and more than 95% of its land is privately owned. That makes wildfire management uniquely challenging compared to states with vast public forests like California. Prescribed burns, land clearing, and defensible space measures all depend on the willingness of private landowners to participate. Some argue that state mandates could infringe on individual freedoms, while others insist that without stronger regulations, the costs of inaction will fall on everyone. Developers and industry groups are another powerful voice in the debate. As Texas experiences rapid population growth, housing demand is pushing construction deeper into the wildland-urban interface. Real estate developers may resist stricter building codes or land use restrictions that increase costs, while environmental advocates and firefighters warn that unchecked expansion will only magnify disaster risks. The legislature must navigate these conflicting interests, deciding whether to prioritize short-term economic growth or long-term resilience. Climate change, too, has become a political fault line. While scientists emphasize the role of rising temperatures, shifting rainfall patterns, and prolonged drought in intensifying wildfire risks, not all state leaders are eager to frame the problem in those terms. Some prefer to focus on immediate management strategies without acknowledging climate change as a driver. This framing matters because it influences the type of policies adopted. A forward-looking approach requires acknowledging that conditions will likely worsen in the decades ahead, demanding systemic changes in how Texas manages land and resources. One example of these tensions can be seen in the debate over energy infrastructure. Texas is the nation's energy powerhouse, with sprawling networks of pipelines, power lines, and oil and gas facilities. Many of these systems cross wildfire-prone areas. Strengthening them to withstand fire risks requires billions in investment. Critics argue that utilities and corporations should shoulder these costs, since they profit from the infrastructure, while industry groups often push back, warning that higher costs will ultimately be passed on to consumers. Deciding who pays for resilience becomes a political flashpoint. Insurance markets are another emerging battleground. As wildfires become more frequent and costly, insurers may raise rates sharply or even withdraw coverage from high-risk areas. This has already happened in California, where entire regions have become uninsurable. In Texas, policymakers are under pressure to ensure residents can access affordable coverage while also encouraging homeowners to adopt risk reduction measures. Possible solutions include state-backed insurance pools, subsidies for retrofitting homes with fire-resistant materials, or tax incentives for landowners who manage vegetation responsibly. Each option comes with its own financial and political trade-offs. The question of federal versus state responsibility further complicates the landscape. Texas often prides itself on independence, but when disasters strike, federal agencies like FEMA and the U.S. Forest Service play a critical role in funding recovery and assisting with firefighting. Some state leaders welcome this support, while others criticize the reliance on Washington, framing it as inconsistent with Texas's self-reliant identity. This tension shapes how Texas positions itself in national policy debates on disaster management and climate resilience. Despite these conflicts, there are signs of bipartisan recognition that wildfires pose a serious and growing threat. The 2011 fire season, which destroyed over 1,500 homes and scorched millions of acres, remains a powerful memory for many lawmakers. Each new fire season since has added urgency to the issue. Increasingly, even leaders who resist climate framing acknowledge that changing weather extremes demand new investments in fire management. The balance between economic growth and public safety is perhaps the most delicate question of all. Texas thrives on growth, new housing, expanding energy projects, booming industries. Yet unchecked growth into fire-prone areas without proper safeguards is a recipe for disaster. The political challenge is to set policies that allow continued development while ensuring that new communities are built to withstand fire risks. That might mean mandating fire-resistant materials, requiring defensible space around homes, or restricting development in the most vulnerable zones. Such measures may slow profits in the short term, but in the long term, They could save lives and billions of dollars in avoided losses. Ultimately, the policy debate around wildfires in Texas reflects broader questions about the future of the state. Will leaders choose proactive investment, or will they wait for the next disaster to force their hand? Will private property rights continue to dominate at the expense of collective safety? Or will Texas craft a model of cooperation that respects freedom while recognizing shared responsibility? These are not just technical issues, they are political choices that will define the resilience of Texas for generations to come. When discussing wildfire resilience, it is easy to focus only on state agencies, budgets, or political debates. But in reality, the first line of defense against fires often comes at the community level. Small towns, local fire departments, neighborhood associations, and individual families are the ones who face the flames directly. The resilience of Texas in the years ahead will depend not only on statewide strategy, but also on how well local communities prepare, adapt, and recover together. In rural Texas, volunteer fire departments remain the backbone of wildfire response. These departments are often staffed by neighbors who know the land intimately, but operate with limited budgets and aging equipment. Their dedication is unmatched, yet they face increasing pressure as fire seasons lengthen and intensify. Supporting them with more funding, training, and coordination with state agencies could be one of the most impactful ways to strengthen local defenses. Communities that invest in their volunteer firefighters are effectively investing in their own survival. Another powerful form of resilience comes from education and awareness. In Bastrop County, which was devastated by catastrophic fires in 2011, schools, churches, and civic groups now hold regular wildfire awareness events. Residents learn how to create defensible space around their homes, clear brush, and maintain evacuation plans. Programs like Firewise USA, which certify communities that adopt best practices in fire prevention, have gained traction in several Texas counties. These initiatives may seem small, but they build a culture of preparedness that can save lives when the worst happens. Local leadership plays a critical role as well. Mayors, county judges, and community leaders are often the ones making decisions about emergency shelters, evacuation routes, and resource distribution. Their ability to coordinate with state and federal agencies can mean the difference between chaos and order during a fire. In some towns, leaders have gone further, spearheading proactive measures such as controlled burns on public lands or ordinances requiring fire-resistant building materials for new developments. These choices may not always be popular, but they demonstrate the kind of foresight that builds resilience over decades. Stories of resilience from across Texas highlight what is possible when communities take ownership of fire preparedness. In the Panhandle, ranchers have long practiced land management techniques such as strategic grazing, which reduces fuel loads and lowers fire risk. In Central Texas, neighborhood groups have organized brush days, where residents come together to clear vegetation collectively, creating fire breaks that protect entire subdivisions. After devastating fires, towns have rallied to rebuild not just homes, but also community bonds, ensuring that the recovery process strengthens rather than weakens local ties. Technology is also finding its way into community-level adaptation. Some towns have installed fire detection cameras on high ridges, providing early alerts when smoke is detected. Others are experimenting with text alert systems that notify residents instantly of evacuation orders or dangerous conditions. These tools are relatively inexpensive compared to the costs of disaster recovery, yet they require organization and leadership to implement effectively. Communities that embrace these technologies are positioning themselves to respond faster and with greater coordination. The role of faith communities should not be overlooked either. In many Texas towns, churches and religious organizations serve as hubs of support during crises. They open their doors as shelters, provide meals to displaced families, and mobilize volunteers for cleanup and rebuilding efforts. Beyond the physical aid, they also provide emotional and spiritual support, which can be just as critical for long-term recovery. Resilience is not only about surviving the flames, but also about healing from the trauma they leave behind. One of the most promising strategies at the local level is building strong regional networks. Fires do not respect county lines, and collaboration between neighboring communities is essential. In parts of Texas, fire chiefs from multiple counties now meet regularly to share resources and coordinate responses. These networks allow for faster mutual aid when fires spread rapidly across jurisdictions. They also foster a sense of shared responsibility, reminding residents that wildfire resilience is a regional issue, not just a local one. However, not all communities are equally prepared. Wealthier areas may have the resources to retrofit homes with fire-resistant materials, install advanced detection systems, or fund volunteer fire departments adequately. Poorer, rural areas often struggle to afford even basic safety measures. This creates disparities in resilience, with some communities better protected than others. Addressing these gaps will require state and federal support, but it also calls for solidarity within Texas itself. Stronger communities can lend expertise, equipment, or training to those with fewer resources, strengthening the state as a whole. Ultimately, the future of wildfire resilience in Texas may depend most on cultivating a culture of preparedness at the community level. Laws and budgets can set the framework, but it is the everyday actions of residents, clearing brush, planning evacuation routes, supporting firefighters, that make the difference when flames arrive. Wildfires are unpredictable, but resilience is not. It is something communities can build, nurture, and pass on to future generations. The lesson is clear. The fight against wildfires is not won in government offices or distant agencies alone. It is won in neighborhoods, on ranches, in small-town fire stations, and through the bonds of ordinary Texans who choose to prepare together. When communities embrace this responsibility, they transform vulnerability into strength, ensuring that no matter how fierce the fire season becomes, they will not face it alone. As we come to the end of this exploration into the future of Texas wildfires, the story we've uncovered is both sobering and inspiring. The risks are real, the science is clear, and the consequences of inaction could be devastating. Yet within this same story lies resilience, ingenuity, and the undeniable spirit of Texas communities determined to protect their land, their families, and their future. Wildfires have become a defining challenge of our time, no longer rare disasters, but recurring threats that test our preparedness year after year. The climate signals point toward longer fire seasons, hotter summers, and drier landscapes. Combined with expanding development into wildland areas, this means that millions more Texans will be living in zones of heightened risk. For policymakers, emergency agencies, and everyday residents, the question is no longer if another catastrophic fire will come, but when. But here is the crucial truth. Catastrophe is not inevitable. Fires may be unavoidable, but disasters are not. Disasters are what happen when communities are unprepared, when warnings go unheeded, and when resources fail to meet the scale of the threat. Texas has the knowledge, technology, and capacity to reduce the damage of future fires if the right decisions are made now. We've seen that solutions exist at every level. State leadership can ensure agencies like the Texas A&M Forest Service, the Texas Division of Emergency Management, and the National Guard are equipped and coordinated. Local governments can adopt smarter zoning, stronger building codes, and proactive land management. Communities can strengthen volunteer fire departments, invest in education, and embrace fire-resistant practices. Families can prepare evacuation plans, clear defensible spaces, and remain vigilant when fire danger is high. Every layer matters, and every action adds to the resilience of the whole. Equally important is the recognition that this is not just a Texas issue, it is a national one. As fires grow larger and smoke drifts across state lines, the health, economic, and ecological impacts ripple far beyond where the flames burn. What Texas learns in the years ahead will shape how the entire United States confronts the era of megafires. This is both a burden and an opportunity, a chance for Texas to lead, to innovate, and to inspire. Hope can be found in the countless stories of Texans who have already faced fire and risen stronger. Ranchers who turned land management into a shield against flames. Small towns that rebuilt after devastation, turning tragedy into unity. Scientists and engineers developing new tools for detection and suppression, and neighbors helping neighbors when the sky turned red. These stories remind us that while fire destroys, it also reveals the strength of community, the value of foresight, and the resilience of the human spirit. Still, hope without action is only illusion. Preparing for the future requires courage. Political courage to fund prevention, social courage to accept change, and personal courage to take responsibility for our role in protecting our homes and communities. It means confronting hard truths about climate and risk, even when those truths are inconvenient. It means prioritizing long-term safety over short-term savings. And it means recognizing that the choices we make today will determine not only how many acres burn tomorrow, but also how many lives are spared. The path forward is not easy, but it is clear. We must treat fire with the respect it demands, not only as a threat, but also as a teacher. Fire teaches us the cost of neglect, but it also shows the power of preparation. It warns us of our vulnerabilities, but reminds us of our capacity to adapt. If Texas listens to these lessons, the state can build a future where communities are safer, ecosystems are healthier, and disasters are less frequent and less severe. To the people of Texas and to all watching, the message is this: the future is not written in flames. It is written in the choices we make, the priorities we set, and the resilience we build. Every fire season ahead is a test, but also an opportunity to rise to the challenge. And to you, our viewers, this is where your role begins. By staying informed, by sharing knowledge, and by supporting initiatives that strengthen resilience, you become part of the solution. If this video has helped you understand the stakes and the steps we can take together, we ask you to support our mission. Follow our channel Crisis Lens for more in-depth analysis of disasters and the lessons they carry for our world. Like this video if you believe awareness is the first step toward action. Share it with others so that more voices can join the conversation on resilience, safety, and preparation. The future of Texas and the future of wildfire resilience everywhere depends on us acting together. The flames will come again, but with foresight, preparation, and unity, we can ensure that when they do, Texas will not simply endure.